All right, so welcome everyone. I'm James Anthony Tyler. I am really excited to be moderating today for the DreamlandXR virtual speaker series. And we got two amazing content creators and producers with us. So our first person that I want to introduce is Nick Leavens, who has consulted companies. He's a writer, he's a director, I mean, what haven't you done, Nick?
I haven't worked with you yet, James, so hopefully that'll happen soon.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So welcome. And then our other producer here, and they both work for an amazing company that we're gonna get into, CRUX, but it's Mr. Blair Russell. And I gotta call him Mr. because he is doing amazing things in the theater space and now in the XR virtual space. I mean, he's one of the producers on 14-time Tony-nominated Slave play. Is that correct?
I think whatever it was, we broke the record.
You broke records.
And that's what matters. No, that's not. No, I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been exciting to be exploring producing in Broadway, off Broadway, internationally, and now in XR.
Yeah. And tell us about some of the other stuff you've done. I mean, you have an amazing resume too.
Most of my producing projects have been in New York on Broadway or off-Broadway shows. We did an immersive off-Broadway production of Sweeney Todd. I've invested in some West End shows, as well as I've worked for companies like New Jameson Theaters, Goodspeed Musicals, Santa Fe Opera, Cirque du Soleil. So kind of bringing all those different experiences together now into the technology world.
All right, doing it. Brother is doing it. All right, so let's get in. I prepared some questions for you all because, you know, I'm not as knowledgeable about the XR world. So I was so happy to dig in and find out about all of the amazing things going on there and how people are telling just great stories and giving audiences great experiences. So my first question is with CRUX. Let's talk about your company, CRUX. How did it come about? What was the germination for that idea? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so CRUX was founded by Lauren Ruffin and Dafina McMillan. And it was really started initially with the idea that the company would work with performing arts organizations to help specifically Black theater companies to find other revenue sources. We all know that Black theaters tend to be underfunded compared to their white counterparts to astounding degrees, and they are already excellent at finding alternate revenue sources. What we see, or what CRUX was hoping to do and is doing now, is finding scalable means in the XR space to give audiences the content that they might not have access to. Generally, what CRUX does is we are an XR, which is your VR, your AR, all of your Rs, all of your realities into one place. We're an XR cooperative working to center Black storytelling. And we work with Black artists, developers, content creators, and create all types of things. And we're a cooperative, so we share all of the funds in the profit making in that. Yeah.
That's really amazing, really amazing. And you know what? Let's talk about XR. I'm glad you touched on that because maybe Blair, you can give us. I mean, in the theater world, we have been, especially since we've been in pandemic mode, talking about equity. And for those in our audience who aren't as aware of the term equity, I know a lot of you are very smart. I don't want you attacking me. You know what equity are, but there's somebody who doesn't know equity, doesn't know the term. So Blair, could you help them out?
Yeah, as far as like having equity within the theatrical space, you know, with the theater world, it has been run by the same people for hundreds of years. Those are generally white men, older white men. And the opportunities for creators, for performers, for designers, for directors have not been there for people of color, for women, for people, trans and non-binary people as well. So there's been a big push since the pandemic, but specifically after there were the riots with the Black Lives Matter movement, after the death of George Floyd, for there to be more equity within the theater. And that is, you know, really the ability for us to see change with who is producing content, who is creating content, who's involved behind the scenes, and who is benefiting from all of this, who is benefiting from the stories that we're telling. And the theater, even if you see a whole cast that's Black or a whole cast that is Latino, that doesn't necessarily mean that those communities are benefiting from the profits of those projects. So one of the great things about working with CRUX as a cooperative is that you feel valued for your work, and you feel that your work is valued and that you're appreciated. And so it's been exciting to go from a space where that struggle is still happening to a space where people are starting to figure out ways to solve that problem and have more equity within this space.
Mm-hmm. You know what I would even add, because I myself am a theater artist, not even just financially, you know, non-white, artists may not be benefiting financially, but there is also, spiritually and mentally, and what stories are actually, who the story is for in the audience, the intended story. So with that being said, I want to ask, what is your approach to finding artists and stories that are rooted in liberation? I saw that word liberation in your mission statement. I thought that was brilliant. So what's your approach in finding artists that, meet that standard?
I think, and Nick can talk about this a little bit as well, but one of the exciting things about working in this space is that in a way we are liberating people from some of the oppressive nature of the predominantly white organizations that exist within the theater and the oppressive white supremacist practices that exist within the theater. So often when we're approaching people, we're coming from a stance of what are the stories that you want to tell? What have you not been able to do? So often you'll know this, you're dealing with a commission that's like, well, we want a story about this. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll write this story. I'll write the story that you want me to tell. So it's our hope that as more artists move into the space of working in XR, that they have a chance to liberate themselves from their understanding of what it is, what the stories they should be able to tell. And obviously we have a focus on Black storytellers within this space.
Yeah, I think that Blair's right on there. There's a few different things that we can pull out of that really great question, James. But something that Blair and I are like kind of amazed by always is that when we approach people for a project, first of all, we're paying people fair wages, and usually multiple times above what theater rates are. But beyond that, we're not going to people, as Blair said, with like, we're commissioning you for this story that we want to hear from you. We're saying, what do you want to do? And so people jump at the opportunity. They jump at the opportunity to work in a new space. And, theater is an extractive art form, the way it's structured. The institutional structures are based in white leadership that thinks it knows best. And we fundamentally push back on that. And I think that besides the joy of working with amazing groups of artists on the regular, is that we're discovering with the Black Imagination series that the myth that there are Black audiences to go to see Black theater, it is a myth. And we did the first round of the Black Imagination series. We sold out every performance. we had a wait list that was double the size of the space that we had, and the audience was national and global, and that it was just astounding. The response to it was pretty cool.
And that name, Black Imagination Series, I mean, one, it sounds good, but it's important that imagination is at the center of it, because we wanted it to be about the writer's imagination and the artist's imagination. And so when we're saying like, tell the story you want to tell, that's what the imagination is all about.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That really is. And I would even add on to Nick, what you said, that, I mean, it is a myth that the people on stage have to be aligned, you know, their race in the audience has to be aligned, you know?
Yeah.
Except, and this is how white supremacy functions, except when white people are on stage. White people are somehow the default to these theater leaders. So it's just outrageous. And I'm glad you all are proving that it's all a myth, you know?
Yeah.
You know, my next question is, because I know like theater artists that even find it hard to make the leap from theater to film and TV, where they will be guaranteed, you know, more money. So, and you both are guys who started in the theater. So what was it about CRUX and Black Imagination that you wanted, what made you want to be a part of it? Take us back to the day where you said, this is a great idea.
Blair, do you mind if I jump into this one first? So I was working with doing consulting work with another company, and was sent to represent that company at a conference that CRUX was hosting. And when Lauren and Delphina were talking about an organization that they had created in order to directly address the systematic inequalities, specifically with pay and extractive techniques with IP and Black artists, it just blew my mind, and I really wanted to be involved. And so I kept showing up. I just kept showing up. I really geek out on ethical structures, and you know, when CRUX started, when I started working with them, they eventually hired me because I kept showing up. I went to Albuquerque, where Lauren is based, and I just was like, "Hey, what's up?" We were initially going to just launch as a content platform and then move into this other space. The pandemic and the tragedies of last summer really blew that plan, but the subsequent work was really the perfect silver lining on a really otherwise very dark year. And so I just by happenstance, I had this skill set of producing and developing other people's work. So it was really very fortuitous, and Blair showed up.
Yeah, for me, I was moving throughout the theater world, telling people that we really need to explore virtual reality. And I had been doing that for like 6-7 months after I had my first experience in a headset, and nobody was biting. Nobody was interested. But I happened to be on a call, and one person said, "Oh, you should talk to Lauren Ruffin and CRUX. Their group that's probably interested in what you're talking about." And so I went to this meeting, talked to that person, but then it kind of, the idea went away. I was like, virtual reality is too complicated. I can't deal with this right now. And then obviously like the pandemic happened, and I was like, oh yeah, now is the time to really be talking. Maybe people will listen. Set up a call. I think I found Lauren on LinkedIn and set up a call. And after that call, it was like immediate. Nick and Lauren were both like, "Yeah, let's do this." And I was like, oh, okay, like do it like now? And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it now." I'm like, okay, I'm not ready for this. In the theater, it takes like a year, and then you have to like think about it and plan, and then it's going to be another year after that. And so as soon as I got a sense that they were ready to move forward, I was definitely excited to join with CRUX and produce the Black Imagination series, and they just sort of adopted me. So now I'm here.
It's really cool to work with, like Blair is incredible to work with. And what we've been finding at CRUX is like we have people that act as catalysts for a project as specific as the Black Imagination series. And like I love the idea of expanding into theater, but it really happened because Blair came on board. And the ideas that Lauren and I had been knocking around with our artists and other folks, Blair was like, okay, yeah, I'll just hit the ground running with this. And because the tech space tends to work a lot faster than the traditional art spaces, we put it up in a month. And like we went from Blair being introduced to us to us deciding to do it, and then a month later we staged the show.
Wow, that is nothing happens that fast in theater.
And paid people, and we paid people,
and you sometimes don't get paid.
Most of the time you don't get paid.
Yeah. My next question is going to be a little more complicated because I've been reading Cast by Isabel Wilkerson over and over since it came out. Have any of you checked that out? I mean, that's not the question, but I'm so struck by.
Next question.
Yeah. And you haven't read it, it's in the interview. But no, her book Cast her thesis is basically that America is a racial caste system, which seems so obvious. We all live in this world, and that Black people are at the bottom of that caste system. And you got to check this book out. So I would love to know, because you guys have this amazing Black Imagination series, but individually and collectively at CRUX, how do you make sure that you're not in this space still perpetuating white supremacy? I mean, we know what happens in the traditional theater. So how do you all manage that in the XR world?
Yeah, I think it's a question that I have to remind myself a lot. And Lauren has been working on this for a long time. Nick's been working alongside her for a long time. And sometimes for me, it's something that I remind myself coming into the theater space where white voices and white faces are always put front and center. Sometimes I just forget to think about how can I use my position and my power to center Black voices, to center Black storytelling, to center Black people, to center Black faces. And what I love is that when I go to a meeting, a CRUX meeting, when we have our virtual meetings or when we're having conversations, I'm seeing all people of color and Nick, and so that is the reminder. And it's what I'm always telling theaters, right? Theaters are always asking, how can we change and be better? It's like, just like have more people who don't look like you. And it is the reminder that you need. And especially, of course, having Lauren leading us, but really just everyone who's involved understands this. And so the first thing we do when we're even thinking about projects is like, does this serve the mission of the co-op? Does this serve the mission of the Black Imagination series? Is this the right project to take on? And it really does happen in the first conversation before we do any work. So I feel like I am supported by the rest of the co-op and making sure that we are always focused on these ideals.
Yeah. Blair hit the nail on the head. If you haven't noticed, I'm white, so I have to be constantly checking myself, because I don't want to be that guy. And my background, like you said, is in theater. I worked in theater for a really long time. I ran a company for 5 years that was specifically focused on addressing problems of the theater industry. And what I realized in that time of being the artistic director of that company was that the way that New York, specifically theater, is structured is to train artists to put aside their own community needs, their own personal needs, in order to serve the mission of an organization. Not even the mission of the art, the mission of the organization. And I found that really hard to justify. And the deeper I got, the more bitter I got, because I saw the amazing writers that I fell in love with their work, and I saw them struggling against the same things over and over again. You know, my buddy Jay Holtham, my friend Anna Munch, my friend Monet Harris Mendoza, they're just like doing this amazing work, and they kept hitting the wall.
I know these people.
Yeah, they get the little sliver of the diversity program.
Yep.
And so, like Blair was saying, we have these meetings where we're all on the same page, and at CRUX, and I've gotten out of them and had one-on-ones with people where our colleagues will say, this doesn't feel real, because we're all on the same mission and everybody's working, everybody's really cool, everybody's down, and we're doing really great work. Anyway, all that to say, I with the exception of right now, I tend to let other voices lead the way. That's very, very important to me. That's the white guy in the room. And I think that should be the ethos of this industry. If you're not opening the door for others, you're not doing your job.
I'm trying not to nod too much because I don't want people to be like, oh, he's a crazy person, but I get everything that you all are saying. It's really fantastic stuff. And what are some things that you all are doing differently from traditional theater in your space and when it comes to storytelling?
Pay people.
That's first a great thing.
So I think what's really exciting is that we all love to learn and we all love to discover, and we like to bring artists along with us on that journey, create space for them to discover, bring more people in, bring more Black artists in. The XR world is in its infancy, and there is so much to be discovered, but particularly, you know, the questions of like ethics, the questions of like how people behave in these spaces, the questions of even like who are the leaders in these spaces, that's not answered yet. I mean, we know there are big companies who are creating the hardware, and they're going to have some sense of control, but the actual creators themselves, we don't know. We don't even know who that is. So with CRUX, we're trying to not only be one of the leaders, but we're also trying to create leaders and create artists and fill out all these roles, so that what we don't have is the situation that we have in theater right now, which is when everyone's looking around going, but I don't know any, or like that one person that I knew was already taken. And so we want this, every time we have an opportunity, I think we think of it from a stance of, okay, who can we bring in? What can we discover? How can we make this a good opportunity and a good experience for everyone who's involved, so that they continue to engage with us and they continue to engage with the work that we're creating in XR. And I just think like it's limitless what we're able to do right now. And I hope that as CRUX grows, as our presence grows in the industry, that we like influence others and affect others, and hopefully they create the same opportunities. So what we see is a space that feels, like we were saying, more equitable, without having to wait until it's too late and then come back and fix it like we're doing in theater.
Yeah, I mean, like theater is a thousands-year-old art form, and in the Anglo world, there's the well-made play. You know, in the film world, there is a specific structure that you're taught. All of these things come out of white male viewpoints, and like Blair's saying, you know, this is a new art form, and so like we really have the ability to center Black storytelling as the foundation of what good storytelling in XR is, and that is more exciting because if we do our job at CRUX in 10 years, 30 years, 50, 100 years, people will be teaching the foundation of XR that will have its roots in Black storytelling and the diaspora. That's super exciting.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But I have to add too what a lot of people don't know or don't think about, and I love what you said, Nick, earlier about the training programs and theater spaces who try to erase people's their cultural backgrounds or their cultural knowledge to be in the space. But it's only because lies are perpetuated in these institutions, and also there's a whole erasure of Africa. I mean, Africa is like storytelling started there, theater started there, but there's no discussion of that anywhere in New York City theater, which is, a town you look around. I mean, you can't walk 5 minutes and see all white people. It's always a super, everyone's everywhere in New York City. Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
Got it.
Okay. So you know what I wanted to ask about also, because for me, and I'm a Howard graduate, so different type of mindset, especially when it comes to storytelling and walking into these spaces. And there is such an acknowledgement of Africa and Africanness. But in the traditional theater space, it's very Eurocentric and white-centered. And so I am wondering how you can have, bodies in your space that may have maybe Black people. And this is a part of why Cast by Isabel Wilkerson is so amazing. You all go out and get that book and read it. I promise I don't get any of the profits. But people can walk around and not be white, but still be living with white supremacy and perpetuating white supremacy. So I'm wondering, have you had any incidents amongst yourselves or conversations with artists who might not be right for this space? Or is it just so inclusive that all, if you're Black and and you're Clarence Thomas, you got a story to tell, come on, I mean, how does it work?
It's pretty utopian, actually. I feel like there's such a, like, you really have to sign on to CRUX and the ideas. Like, you have to be ready to work with Nick and Lauren and the other members of the co-op. You have to be ready. You have to read the mission. You have to understand those words. You have to understand what we're creating. I think the hardest part is for people internally rather than having external. I know for me, it's like challenging myself to accept things like I've spent an hour on this thing and I should be paid for the hour that I spent on the thing. And like I laugh about it, but it really is so bad that I've worked for so long in situations where you're like, well, I just had to do it because, well, you don't know. Like we said, we're serving a mission that has nothing to do with us most of the time. So there's a lot of things that I feel like people have to challenge within themselves when they join. And then externally, I've yet to have a bad situation. I think because people who come in, this is so core and like rooted in their own practices, whether they knew it or not. It's like what you want and what you're ready for. And then when we're working with external clients, I mean, Nick can talk about that a little bit, but I think there is also another agreement that they understand. It's like, right, and the first thing you get when you're reading a proposal is like, what is CRUX?
Yeah.
And if you want to work with us, you have to understand this. So
yeah, the when we have the dance of whether or not we'll work with a client usually takes a few weeks to a few months. In the longest case, probably like 6 months. And you learn a lot about each other. Yeah. And there are clients that will spend the time to build their understanding before we begin an engagement. There are clients that get it right away. The Actors Theater of Louisville, we're working with them now, like right away. Like we knew right away that that's going to work. And there are companies that we mutually often will agree not to work with. one of the things that's really important to us is working with primarily Black organizations. We will work with white-led organizations, but it's usually a different type of engagement because there's not a lived experience that meets, you know, our mission. With what Blair's talking about, with like the reminding yourself to pay yourself, is like internally at CRUX, we're radically transparent about money because it's cooperative. We share the money. We're getting paid the same amount, you know, like when we break it down by hours and things. And you know, the ultimate goal is that the wealth that we're creating goes into the community of Black artists, developers, producers that are in CRUX and surrounding CRUX. How Lauren always talks about how long can a dollar stay in the Black community, and we're hoping to extend the life of that dollar.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And that, I mean, it really is. And so when it comes to funders, you know, last night I'm watching CNN, and after all that has went on these past 4 years, you know, we don't have to get deep into it, but I'm watching.
What happened?
What's that?
Something happened?
Yeah, what happened? So there's all these corporations who are saying, we're not going to give to blah, 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 blah. So when it comes to you all finding fun, and I know it can be so complicated because you need money to continue to be in this space, there's the same principles when it comes to funding. And I mean that absolutely with no judgment. I think it's a great thing to discuss, especially since you all discuss, you know, we all get paid $5 for this or whatever.
Yeah. So there's a few different funding models that we're working on. So CRUX has 2 legal entities. We have our cooperative and public benefit company. And so the cooperative is just kind of getting booted up. We have the group of people that will continue it forward, and we're onboarding those people, because a lot of the folks that we hired, we went from 3 people to almost 20 in the course of 3 months last year. And so the company just exploded. So we have foundation support to get the company started. And the primary foundation that is working with us is very, very mission aligned. And there will be projects that we do. We're doing a project about the Black Panther alum. That's a national project that we'll be announcing. Well, I guess I'm announcing it right now, but will be announced as part of this series. We have a video that will come out. Anyway, that will be we'll be seeking funding for that. But a lot of our money to date has been earned income. And I think that that's something that we can be really proud of, that where the work that we're doing is not only supporting this amazing group, but we're also able to redirect some of the funds to things like the Black Imagination series, to small grants to support artists that are creators and coming to us and saying, hey, I want to make this thing. Can I have $5,000 for it? Yeah, sure. That's a cool thing. And yeah, I think I got it right, Blair. Did I get it all?
Yeah, and I mean, I think we also can express that, you know, Lauren is co-CEO, correct, of Fractured Atlas, which obviously helps artists raise money for projects, and so she has a ton of experience in the world of fundraising and connections in that world. And as well, like, I'm really happy that we're not a nonprofit. There are plenty of great nonprofit organizations in the world, and there are plenty of terrible nonprofit theaters in the world. And we were talking about how New York makes people have to serve institutions, and the nonprofit structure of so many of these theaters is what causes that. And I don't even think they know what their missions are, or why their missions are, or how what they're doing actually serves the mission. And so by living in the world that we're living in, and creating opportunities for individual people to actually build wealth together as a group. That can only benefit our community right now. And building into our process this ability for us to give back to the community, but again, not charity, to actually create work for people and to pay people and to have that cycle continue, so that money comes in to CRUX can give the money back to Black storytellers and Black artists, and it continues, rather than like money goes into a nonprofit, something happens, they put out something, people donate more money, and you keep serving the audience rather than like serving the people who you work with. So it's really important. It's the same standards I think have to apply where the money comes from, and because most of it has been earned and we set those standards with our clients, we're setting standards when we're getting money.
With the exception of that that foundation support, unlike most tech-oriented companies, we haven't taken investor money yet. Okay. So the people that own the company are the co-op members, and that's it. And that was a very intentional decision, considering the history of extractive nature of investors and Black IP. Mm-hmm. So we're really, really careful about that.
Fantastic, really fantastic. And let's talk about the audience. So I just want to know, how does the audience factor into the ways that you all tell stories? And do you also engage the artists in conversations about audience? Because, you know, as coming from the traditional theater space, you know, you have to have these dumb conversations sometimes with literary people or whoever about audience. I mean, I won't even get into it. That's just, how do you
understand?
Yes,
I understand.
Exactly.
Coming from the commercial theater background, you know, audience and talking about the audience is so core to what you do. And yet sometimes it feels like everything we're just making it up. Like, we're just assuming what's going to happen. We assume who the audience is. So then we start appealing to that audience. And then that audience shows up and we're like, we did it. Right. Yeah. I think one of the greatest discoveries from our first sort of exploration in the Black Imagination series was we had no idea who was going to show up. We didn't know that anybody was going to show up. We're like, we're going to do this. Will theater people get a headset and come? Will people who are interested in like video games and virtual reality come? We found an audience that was, one, so aligned with what CRUX wants to create, because, you know, as we talked about at the beginning of the mission, it was to support Black organizations who generally serve Black audiences. And I think CRUX also wants to serve Black audiences, serve all audiences, but let's serve Black audiences first. Mm-hmm. And I think with the Black Imagination series, we didn't quite get in depth into those conversations about how we could find the Black audience in virtual reality, but we were very lucky in that they found us. And just putting Black at the beginning and saying Black Imagination series, and then working with a Black director, Black writers, Black performers, the audience exists. The audience is there. They have friends. They have people will show up. People will show up who we know, people who show up who we don't know. There's a community of people in XR spaces. There's a community of Black people in XR spaces, and it's not a small community. You can go on Facebook and there's like multiple different groups with a ton of people who are getting their quest today, just got it, you know, have had the old one getting the second version, because we talk about the myths, and there's this myth that like Black people aren't into that. And then, of course, it's the same thing like within the theater. Once you start telling people they're not into something, you stop letting them know that something should be for them. So all we had to do was say Black Imagination series, and people knew that this was for them, and they came. And that's really important to me. Accessibility is really important to me, and making sure our audience reflects our performers, reflects the world, reflects New York, reflects globally, reflects Africa, reflects everything. And we can do that because you can engage with this from anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I even saw in one of the articles you all were talking about the headsets. I think that might have been Lauren talking about that, the headsets, and how they're built for one specific type of face, you know?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I mean, I can talk to you all day, but I feel like we have to wrap up soon. So I'm going to wrap with one more question. Where would you like to see XR in a year or in 10 years? and CRUX. I shouldn't even just say XR, but you all as a company and what you were doing.
Blair, I'm gonna take first bite at this apple because I want you to have the last word. There are so many people that are interested in what we are doing and wanting to be part of it, and I really think that that we can build the beginnings of a very vibrant industry. Like I said earlier, I geek out on ethical structures. Like I'm working with the team to design a talent training pipeline, and so that we can get people really, really super experienced and have our experts that we already have in our company getting the next generation of experts ready from the Black community, because like Blair's saying, folks are already there. They want that. They want to be that person. They're already consuming the product. And I think that, like we were talking about earlier, I think that Black storytelling is going to be at the center of XR. The virtual world has some good stories, but generally is a little bit lacking. And I think that there's a ton of room to grow. And all types of people will want to hear stories coming from Black artists, not just Black people. And we can provide that need.
That's fantastic. I always say, and I've said it way too many times in the traditional theater space, and they know it. The more specific your story is, the more universal it will be. And it's never the audience. There's always gatekeepers scapegoating the audience as the problem for why they won't tell whatever story.
Always. Yeah. And I hope writers like yourself can say in 2 years, I write plays or I write for film or television or XR, right? Like I don't want that to be, I want it to be that common. I want us to have our computers and our phones and our headsets as another way to engage with the content. And I think CRUX itself, the way it's structured, is not designed to sort of be in charge of the world of XR, right? But what it is a community of artists who will be the leaders, who will be people we look to. Honestly, like I am such a fan of some of the people we work with and so impressed by what they do. And there aren't really like VR influencers yet, but like they're going to be VR influencers. Like they should be already. So that's what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see this, our co-op grow, and everyone, not only when we're working together in CRUX, but when we're working on our individual projects, to be leaders in the community that is accessible to as many people as possible. The way we all have supercomputers in our pockets, we're all going to have a way to engage with XR content.
Wow, fantastic. I really don't even want to wrap up, but we have to, but I do want to give you one last word. I mean, I feel so inspired, you all. Thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation. Anything else you want to tell the people watching?
We have a bunch of stuff coming up. So people can go to either crux.black, CRUX.black, or imagination.black to find out more stuff about us and keep up with what we're doing. We got a pretty lively social media account or accounts. And yeah, that's the best way to keep up with what we're doing.
Perfect. Blair, do you want to sign us off?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the future of this space. I believe that with the group that we have and the people who we are engaging with, that it's not a dream, it's not a hope. It will happen that Black creators, storytellers, and technologists will be the leaders in virtual reality and extended reality. We see it from the work that is being lauded. We see that there is an acceptance for the work that doesn't happen in other places. And I I think if you're not on board yet, if you're not on the train yet, you definitely should jump on, get your headset, start playing. It's all new. There's so many opportunities for people, jobs, careers, generational wealth, all of that exists within this space. And I hope people are not afraid because it's new. I hope people come with us and find out about CRUX. And if you work in theater, technology, or writer, like, engage with us. We're a great group, and we're ready to keep pushing Black artists, Black storytelling forward. So, yeah.
Perfect. That is the perfect way to wrap it up. They're gonna regret they said that because I'm gonna stalk them now, you all. All right, thank you, Nick Leavens and Blair Russell. Thank you, DreamlandXR, in this virtual speaker series. I'm James Anthony Tyler, and it has been my privilege to moderate this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.